everyone, thanks for joining me. You're watching In Deep on the Delta. This is the weekly report for the week of June 30th. And we're going to start off with something a little different. I'm going to give you guys a couple of saltwater trips that you might be interested in if you're thinking about maybe getting off the Delta and maybe getting out of the valley heat and getting over on the coast. First trip, I talked with Jeff Suhu from Suhu Sport Fishing, and you guys know Jeff. He's usually my man on the river for stripers, but during the summer months, Jeff runs a party boat out of Emeryville, and the word from Jeff is that they are just cleaning house on the salmon. They're getting early limits of quality fish. So that is an option that you might want to check out for those of you who hop on a charter boat every now and then. Emeryville Sport Fishing, check out Jeff Suhu. It might be the time to get out there and try to get a salmon or two. He'll give you all the information on what they've been doing and what boat he's running. Also on the saltwater scene, Nathan, my son, has been out kayaking up at Timber Cove. Timber Cove is just above, right around Fort Ross, just above San Francisco. There's a community of kayakers that fish out of Timber Cove, and this time of year they are fishing for lingcod and rockfish. And boy, I got a couple pictures here, a couple of the lingcod that they've got recently. Big lingcod and good numbers of rockfish. They're fishing shallow water, and like I said, there's a nice little community of kayakers that fish out of Timber Cove. If you guys that are fishing, kayak fishing out of the Delta, and you have thought about maybe dipping your toes into the salt water, give Nathan a call, and you can reach Nathan at Cooper9561032 @gmail.com. Same number that you would send reports to. Nathan reads all the reports, and he reads all of the correspondence that I have. He'll be more than happy to give you a call and answer any questions you may have. And the nice thing about fishing out of Timber Cove, you don't have to go out really far. It's shallow water fishing. You generally have some pretty darn good luck up there, and there are numbers of kayak fishermen out there. So if you talk to Nathan, he'll get you set up on a day where him and his partners are going out there. You guys can all meet up and you go out in a group, so you have some safety in numbers. It might put your mind at ease if it's your first time out there, or you have some you're a little bit nervous about heading out onto the ocean in a kayak. But check out those two options if you want to get out of the heat here in the valley and maybe try something a little different. Okay, let's get into the report. And the Delta is rolling along. It's summertime. We've got 80-degree water, 4 to 8 feet of visibility. The river is in great shape. There's very light pressure, not only from the anglers, but also light pressure on the skiers and the jet skiers. Now, I have been going out a lot. I've been on the river a lot, and the fishing has just been, I'm going to say, fair, average, maybe a little bit below average. It's the same situation we had last week. Everybody's talking about decent numbers, but the bigger fish are getting harder and harder to come by. Now, let's get back to the pressure. And obviously, the pressure, when I'm on the river, most of the time is on the weekdays. The pressure increases a little bit on the weekends, but as far as the bass fishing pressure, I think it might be because a lot of the tournaments have burned off, so a lot of the tournament fishermen are out fishing other areas, pre-fishing other lakes and destinations where they may be having a tournament coming up. It may be the gas. There's also, the skiers and the jet skiers. It could be this gas situation that a lot of people just aren't taking their boats out. So for those of you who can get out on the water and you can afford a gallon or two of gas, it's nice to be out on the Delta. It's a huge body of water, but there are, as far as everything else goes around, if you're fishing other areas like we'll say Comanche or Clear Lake, man, the pressure on the Delta is very light. It's a nice place to be, nice place to get away, even if you're not doing really well when it comes to fishing. So let's talk about stripers. And most of the stripers that we have in the Delta, at least in the Delta itself, from downtown Stockton out to Big Break and all the sloughs, There's still some resident fish in there, but most of those fish have moved out and started heading towards the bay. Nathan, my son, again, has always he always does a lot of striper fishing. He is fishing around Carquinez Straits, Grizzly Island, out that way, and in the last couple of weeks he's seen a huge number of stripers come into the system, and his fishing out, farther out in the delta has been really, really good, especially for numbers and good sized fish. Now, those were the fish that were in this system a couple weeks ago, and they're slowly moving out into the delta, or excuse me, into the bay. Now, the people that are catching fish in the central delta are catching them mostly on jerk baits and chatter baits. I talked with Alan Fong. The fish are still on the Sacramento side, and his crew up there, they're getting good numbers of fish and still some pretty quality fish. It would be my suggestion, if you are going to fish stripers, fish the Sacramento side. Liberty Island is always good. All the little cuts and sloughs coming off of Liberty, or the sloughs coming off the northern Sacramento River, they're still producing stripers. That firecracker chatterbait, the bright red one, looks like a crawdad, that's been really a killer the last couple years, so that's the one I would use. Let's talk about largemouth bass, and it's almost like Groundhog Day. Lots of fish in the system, a lot of rats, and you have to wade through the smaller fish to get one or two big fish. And that is the report from pretty much everyone I've talked to. The shops, I was in contact with both Hook, Line, and Sinker, Outdoor Sportsman. They're not getting a lot of people running through the shops giving them information right now, which is again kind of verifying that there's not a lot of but there's not a lot of pressure on the river for whatever reason. So not a lot of talk around the shops. I talked with Rob from the Bass Hole, and Rob has talked to a lot of people. Same thing. His crew, they're getting fish, but it's just lots of numbers to get a couple of decent fish. And Rob was saying that if you need to catch fish, you want to drop shot or maybe fish a worm, and you'll probably put plenty of fish in the boat. If you're looking for the bigger fish, it's going to be punching. There is a frog bite, but everyone that I've talked to that has been fishing frogs has said they're getting some bigger fish coming up to the frogs, but they're not really eating it. They're getting some big blow-ups, but they're not connecting on it. So take that into consideration if you're coming out here and you're looking for bigger fish. Stay with the punching and the frogging. What have I been doing? I've been putting in a ton of time on the river, and my fishing has been up, down, and all around. It's not great. I'm catching a lot of fish on most days, but again, I've seen the same thing that everyone else is seeing. A lot of small fish to get a couple of big fish. I pulled out the frog quite a bit, and here's my take on the frog for what I've been doing. I've been catching fish on the frog, but most of them are about a pound to a pound and a half. I have not got any huge blow-ups on a frog that I could say, yeah, I've got some big blow-ups on a frog. I just didn't catch them. Fishing a frog, I'm having luck on a frog, but they have been smaller fish. This week I've been punching quite a bit, and the fish that I have punched have also been small fish. Have not got a big fish on the punch bite this week. So for me, I'm still sticking with that because I know the odds are in my favor. If I keep punching and frogging, I'm going to get some big fish. Now, I have caught a couple of nice fish, and those fish have come either early in the morning or right at dark, and I'm fishing wake baits. My wake bait of choice, and the bait that I've been getting a lot of the bigger fish on the last week to 2 weeks is the big Mikey. But if you have a favorite wake bait, I would suggest running that wake bait. I'm getting lots of fish when it comes to throwing poppers out in open water. Those are generally the smaller fish, but if you keep throwing that popper, you'll catch 9 dinks and rats, and then you'll get a 2 or 3 pounder, and maybe if you're lucky you'll get a 3 or 4 pounder. They are coming up to the smaller baits still. It's just that you got to wade through those smaller fish. literally everyone that has sent me reports, and thank you guys so much. I've got a ton of them. I'm going to try to get all your pictures up there. I know I miss some of you guys sometimes, but keep sending the pictures. They're saying the same thing. There is no one bait that's standing out. Jerk baits are catching a few stripers, and they're catching a lot of small fish. Crankbaits are catching fish. Worms, whether you're T-rigging them or wacky rigging them or drop shotting, they are catching fish. Same colors. Green pumpkin keeps coming up all the time. Margarita mutilators, plum colors, black and red, they're all catching fish. The one bait that was absent this week from anyone saying they caught anything on, and I didn't catch a fish on one, is a chatterbait. Other than stripers out in the around Liberty Island, man, they're just not chasing the chatterbaits for me. A few people are getting them on Kitex and underspins, but mostly, you know, you want to, once again, I go over this week after week, replicate a crawdad or a bluegill. That's what the fish are feeding on. With that being said, what's going to happen in the next couple weeks, and why are the big fish not responding like they should? They're still coming out of post-spawn, and they will be here. The big fish will start biting soon. One problem we've had the last week is that we've had tidal coefficients of in the 60s and 70s. I mean, the tide goes up, it goes down, but you see very little tide movement. That's going to change around the 10th of July. We're going to get a full moon around the 14th, and during that time we're going to get tidal coefficients in the 70s and 80s, and I think it might even hit 90s. And that tidal coefficient is going to, that's a good judge of how much water is pushing in and out of the system. We're going to get a good flush of water coming in and out, and if the big fish have not been turned on by then, I think that's going to turn them on. So the deal is, if you're planning a trip from out of the area, I would plan it around that full moon, July 10th through July 16th. Get those tides moving. It's going to trigger a bite, I'm sure. That's the time you definitely want to be on the river. For those of you who have been fishing early and late, and I've really been putting in my time in, you know, from 4 in the morning to 8:30, and then from maybe 6 to 10 or 11 o'clock. The bite is not great. It's pretty consistent, but it's fairly slow. Again, you're going to wade through a lot of small fish to pick up a few big fish, but that is the time that has been most pleasant out here because of the heat, and it is the time when I am getting my best numbers and my biggest fish. A lot of people are fishing rock and tulies. That seems to be the report from most people that are doing on the, you know, better than others. They all have been touting rock with tulies on it, and I have also found that. I've been fishing a lot of the Tule Islands. I've seen some big fish in there running around the base of the tulies, but I have not been able to catch the fish on the Tule Islands. The fish that I'm catching are on the rock banks that have tulies, and I have been doing fairly well on the inside trough, not on the outside. Even at low tide, if I can find an inside trough that's only maybe 2 or 3 feet, I'm punching worms in there, or not punching, but we'll call it light punching. I'm getting T-rigged worms in there, or unweighted worms, and they seem to be sitting right on that edge. So anyhow, that is the report, guys. Hopefully next week we'll have something a little better for you. It's a good time to be out on the Delta, especially early and late. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and I'll see you guys on the water.